My husband's phone buzzed on the counter while he stood 4 feet away, barefoot, humming, stirring a pan of garlic and onions. 3 words on the screen from a woman he'd told me 100 times was, "Just from work." "I miss you." I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I picked up his phone and typed 2 words back to her. "Come over." Then I put the phone down exactly where he'd left it, took a third wine glass out of the cabinet and set it on the table while he asked me if dinner smelled okay. 40 minutes later, she was standing in my doorway, and the first thing she said was, "Damon, you said she wouldn't be home." But I need to go back to the phone, because that part matters. My battery had died in my hand. Black screen, sudden silence. "Can I check the time?" I asked. "Yeah, sure," Damon said without even turning around. No hesitation, no fear. That hurt more than if he had panicked. His phone was warm and unlocked and open. A sign of comfort. A sign of a man who believed he had covered his tracks well. And then it buzzed. Whitney. Saved with nothing romantic beside it. Just a name I'd heard too many times, always paired with the same phrases. "Whitney's just from work. You're overthinking." My chest tightened. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel shock. I felt clarity. Suddenly, every late night made sense. Every team dinner. Every moment he turned his phone face down. I glanced up at him, still cooking, still stirring, still pretending. He didn't know that his secret was glowing in my hands. This was the moment where most women would confront him, ask questions, demand explanations. But something inside me went quiet. I didn't want lies. I wanted the truth to walk through the door on its own feet, so I typed the 2 words and I sent them. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. A typing bubble. Whitney didn't hesitate. "Are you sure?" 3 words full of confidence. She wasn't afraid, that told me everything. I took a slow breath and replied, "Yes." Then, after a pause long enough to feel intentional, "He's busy." I locked the phone and placed it face down on the counter. My heart was going now, but my face stayed calm. Emotions show up in the eyes before they ever reach the voice, so I lowered mine and pretended to fix my sleeve. "Can you set the table?" Damon asked. His voice was gentle, familiar, loving. I reached for the plates. Each one felt heavier than the last, and as I set them down, the memories arrived like uninvited guests. The nights he came home, late, smelling like someone else's perfume. The mornings he woke up already elsewhere. The way he stopped asking how my day was but still expected me to listen to his. I had blamed stress, work pressure, life. Women are taught to excuse first and question later. There was a night in February. He came home at 11:30 and I was still awake, reading, and when he leaned down to kiss my forehead, I smelled it. Not his cologne. Something floral and expensive and entirely wrong in our bedroom. I said, "You smell like a perfume counter." He laughed and said the team had gone to some launch event, that a rep had been spraying samples at everyone all night, and that he'd nearly had a headache from it. It was a good lie. It was specific, it was slightly annoyed. It came out fast. I remember thinking how tired he looked and feeling guilty for even noticing. I got up and put his shirt in the wash myself. That's the part I keep returning to. Not that he lied, that I laundered the evidence for him and then apologized for the question. I poured wine into 2 glasses, then paused. Something in me said, "No, not 2. I took a 3rd glass from the cabinet and placed it carefully on the table. That's when he noticed. He stared at it, his eyebrows pulling together. "Are we expecting someone?" I smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Maybe." His hand froze midair. For a brief second, fear flickered across his face. Just a crack. Then it was gone. Years of lying had trained him well. He laughed nervously. "You're acting strange, Camille." "So are you," I said gently. The 40 minutes between sending the message and hearing the doorbell were the longest of my life, and I spent them doing ordinary things. I folded the napkins. I moved the salt. I checked that the guest towel in the downstairs bathroom was clean, and then I stood in that small room for a moment and looked at myself in the mirror and thought, "You are about to become a different person than the one who walked in here this morning." I wondered whether she would be pretty. I wondered whether she would be young. I wondered, and this is the thought I'm least proud of, whether she was better at something than I was, and which something it might be. Then I turned off the light and went back to the kitchen and asked my husband whether he wanted the good olive oil or the ordinary one. The silence that followed was thick, not angry, heavy. I sat down and listened to the kitchen clock, and each second felt deliberate, like it was counting toward something nobody could stop. I realized then that I wasn't waiting to catch him. I was waiting to see him. "I'll light the candles," I said. He looked up, confused. "Candles? It's not a special occasion." "Maybe it should be." I lit them one by one. The flames trembled, then steadied, much like me. He was watching me carefully now. Something had shifted and he could feel it. I picked up his phone again. Another message had arrived. I'm almost there. No hesitation, no shame. I didn't reply. Some truths don't need encouragement. I set the phone down where he could see it, and his eyes followed my hand. "What's going on?" he asked quietly. I smoothed a wrinkle out of the tablecloth. That didn't matter. "Nothing, just making sure everything looks nice." His jaw tightened. I poured the wine slowly, letting the sound stretch out. 2 glasses filled. Then I reached for the bottle again, and his voice cracked. "Camille, why are you pouring a third?" I met his eyes for the first time since the message. Because honesty isn't meant to be served in pairs. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a moment he looked small, not powerful, not confident, just a man trapped inside his own choices. "Is this about work?" he asked. I almost laughed. "This is about home." He took a step toward me and stopped, like there was a line he was afraid to cross. "I can explain." I raised my hand, not angrily, just enough. "Not yet, let's wait." "For what?" "For the truth to arrive." That's when the doorbell rang. He flinched. I didn't. I walked to the door calmly, and each step felt like shedding another illusion. Before I opened it, I looked back at him. His face was pale, his eyes wide. He already knew. Whitney stood there, not hesitant, not ashamed, not surprised. She wore confidence like perfume, light, intentional, meant to linger, her coat over one arm as if she had arrived somewhere she belonged. Her eyes went past me instantly, straight to him, and in that single glance I saw it. Recognition, intimacy, history. "Oh," she said quietly, not with fear, with confusion. "Damon, you said she wouldn't be home." The words landed in the room like shattered glass. Behind me, I felt him freeze. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Please, come in. Dinner's ready." She looked at me, then really looked at me for the first time. Her expression shifted. Not guilt, not apology, calculation. She was measuring me, comparing, deciding. He finally found his voice. "This isn't what it looks like." "It never is," I said. Whitney walked in slowly, heels clicking, each step louder than the last. She stopped near the table and took in the candles, the plates, the 3 glasses. Her eyes narrowed. "This wasn't the plan," she said. "No," I answered, "but it is the truth." He was pacing now, unraveling. "Camille, can we talk privately?" I shook my head. "Everything worth saying can be said out loud." She crossed her arms. "So you read his messages?" "Yes." "And you invited me?" "Yes." Her lips parted slightly, impressed despite herself. "That was bold." "No," I said. "That was necessary." The room felt smaller now, like the walls were leaning in to listen. He looked between us, desperate. I was going to end it. Whitney laughed. A short, bitter sound. "No, you weren't. You said you were trapped." He stared at her in shock. I raised an eyebrow. "Trapped?" His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The truth had found its own voice. I pulled out a chair. "Sit, both of you." They hesitated. Then slowly, they obeyed. 3 people at one table, one marriage, One affair. No more pretending. I poured the wine. My hand didn't shake. Let's talk. I think we all deserve honesty, don't you? For a moment, nobody spoke. The meal he had cooked with such care sat between us, cooling. Effort placed in the wrong direction, love misused. I took a sip. They didn't. He stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Whitney watched the door, calculating how fast she could leave if it turned ugly. I was the only one present. So, I said, who wants to start telling the truth? He inhaled sharply. I can explain. Don't, Whitney said coldly. You've explained enough. I turned to her. How long? She hesitated. Just a second. But it was enough. 8 months. 8 months. The number rang in my head like a slow bell. 8 months of jokes I wasn't part of. 8 months of touches meant for someone else. 8 months of lies delivered gently, so I wouldn't feel the weight of them. And during those 8 months, I said calmly, how many times did you come into this house? She looked around the room. Twice, when you were visiting your sister. My chest tightened. I didn't let it show. I went to my sister's twice that year. Once in April for 4 days when her youngest had surgery, and I slept on a fold-out sofa and called him every night at 9 because he asked me to. And once in September, a long weekend, and he drove me to the airport and carried my bag and told me not to worry about anything at home. I remembered standing at the gate and texting him that I already missed the house. He wrote back that the house missed me too. I sat at that table doing the arithmetic of my own kindness. All the times I had felt lucky. All the times I had told my sister that I'd married well. She used to say I talked about him like he was a piece of good fortune I couldn't quite believe in. She was right. I couldn't. Can I ask you something? Whitney said suddenly. She had turned her glass around twice without drinking from it. How did you know it was me? I looked at her. I didn't. Until you walked in, I only knew there was a her. Something moved across her face then. The realization that she had identified herself, that nobody had caught her, that she had simply arrived. He said you two hadn't slept in the same bed since March, she said. It wasn't cruelty. She said it the way you check a figure you've been quoted. Damon made a small sound. I didn't look at him. We slept in the same bed last night, I said. He put his arm over me at some point. He always does. She sat back in her chair, and I watched a whole architecture come down behind her eyes. Every story she'd been told rearranging itself into what it actually was. There was a weekend in June, she said slowly. He told me he was at a conference in Denver. He was in Denver, I said. I dropped him off. Whitney laughed once, with no humor in it at all. Then who was he with? And that was the moment the evening stopped being about me, because neither of us knew the answer, and both of us looked at him, and he looked at the table. I turned to him. Did you ever plan to tell me? He swallowed. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, small, breathless. You didn't want to lose your comfort. There's a difference. His eyes filled. I was lonely. You were always busy. We stopped talking. Whitney shifted in her chair. That's not what you told me. You said she didn't care anymore. I looked at him. So which version of me did you sell today? He broke. His shoulders collapsed inward and the words spilled out. Apologies tangled with excuses, regret mixed with self-pity. I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened. Whitney scoffed. Affairs don't just happen. They're chosen. He said it again. It just happened. And I found that I wanted to take the phrase apart in front of him, the way you'd take apart a machine to show someone it has no engine in it. So I did. It happened when you saved her number without a note beside it, I said. It happened when you started taking your phone into the shower. It happened the first time you told her something about me that wasn't true, and you knew it wasn't true while you were saying it, and you said it anyway because it made the next part easier. He was shaking his head, not in denial, just in the way people shake their heads when they're trying to make a sound stop. 8 months is 240 days, I said. You had 240 chances to say one sentence to me, not to end it, just to tell me. And on every single one of those days, you chose the version where I didn't know. I watched him unravel and felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, disappointment. The kind that doesn't scream, it settles. Did either of you ever think about me? Silence. That answer hurt more than words. At some point, I noticed the food had gone cold on the stove. He had made something with garlic and onions and cinnamon, and he had been proud of it. I could tell by the way he kept tasting it. Somebody had taught him that dish, or he had found it somewhere and wanted to try it on me. That's the detail that gets me still. Not the messages. Not the apartment key I later found on his ring that didn't open any door in our building. The fact that he was cooking for me with real attention on the same evening he was answering her, and that both of those things were true at once, and that he apparently felt no friction between them at all. I stood and walked to the counter, my back to them, because I needed a moment to breathe. When I turned around, I was calm. I spent years building a life with you, I said to him, and you spent 8 months dismantling it in secret. He stood too, reaching for me. I'll end it. Tonight. Right now. I stepped back. You already chose. I just finally saw it. I turned to her. And you, Whitney, you can stop waiting for him to leave me. Her eyes widened. He won't, I said, because men who lie to keep 2 lives rarely have the courage to live one honestly. The candles had burned lower, and in that silence I understood something painful and freeing at once. The truth hadn't broken me. It had released me. He was still standing. I'll fix this. I'll change. I'll quit my job. I'll block her. I'll do whatever you want. The words came too fast, stacked on top of each other like a collapsing wall. You're offering solutions, I said quietly, to a problem you created on purpose. Whitney shifted. I didn't mean to destroy anything. He told me you were basically roommates. I turned to her slowly. And you never wondered why he never left? She opened her mouth, closed it, because she knew. People don't believe lies. They accept them. I reached for my wedding ring. The gold caught the candlelight. Years of promises that no longer meant anything. He noticed immediately. No, Camille, please don't. I slid it off. I'm not punishing you. I'm freeing myself. I placed it on the table right between the 3 wine glasses. A small final sound. Whitney stared at it like it was dangerous. I don't want him like this. I didn't think it would end like this. I met her eyes. Nothing that starts in secrecy ends in peace. Whitney left before I did. She stood up, put her coat back over her arm, and stopped by the table where the ring was sitting between the glasses. She looked at it for a long moment. I kept a drawer of things at his place, she said. I mean, at a place he told me was his. A friend's apartment, apparently. She said it to nobody in particular. I've been keeping a toothbrush in another woman's husband's friend's apartment for 8 months and telling myself I was patient. Then she looked up at me and said something I didn't expect. You should know he cried about you, in April. He said he couldn't do it to you. She let that sit. I thought it meant he was a good man in a hard situation. So did I said, for years. She nodded once and walked out, and neither of us ever spoke again. He went down onto his knees, actually went down. I love you, I swear I do. Something broke, not inside me, between us. Love that arrives after betrayal isn't love, it's fear of loss. If you loved me, I said gently, you wouldn't have needed someone else to feel alive. I stood up. They both looked small now. I won't compete. Not with another woman, not with a fantasy, and not with the version of you that only exists when you're afraid. I walked toward the bedroom, my heart pounding, my mind clear. Behind me, he called my name. I didn't turn around. The bedroom felt unfamiliar. Not because it had changed, but because I had. Our wedding photo still sat on the dresser, frozen in a moment when I believed happiness was permanent. I pulled out a suitcase. The zipper was louder than it should have been. I folded my clothes carefully, not because I cared about wrinkles, but because order was the only thing I could control. And with every item I put inside, I felt lighter. Like I was taking back pieces of myself I'd handed over one at a time. From the hallway I could hear him pacing, saying my name over and over as if repetition could undo choice. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired but clear. Change doesn't happen when you're afraid. It happens when you're honest. I took off the necklace he gave me years ago and left it on the dresser beside the photo. There was a knock. Soft, hesitant. Please, just talk to me. I opened the door. He looked like a man who had lost something valuable and only understood its worth after it was gone. I don't hate you, I said, but I don't recognize you anymore. Tears ran down his face. What am I supposed to do without you? I picked up my suitcase. Learn to live with the consequences of your choices. Whitney was still near the front door, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I paused. I believe you, but I also believe you knew. Her silence confirmed it. I opened the door. The night air hit my face, cool, grounding, real. For the first time in months, I could breathe all the way in. Behind me, he called my name one last time. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. I stepped outside and closed the door gently. Not in anger, in certainty. The practical part of leaving is nothing like the way people describe it. There is no music. There is a spreadsheet, there was a joint account with both our names on it and a car in his, and a lease that ran until March. And for 2 weeks, my life was phone calls to people who said they were sorry for my trouble in a voice that meant nothing. I moved my things out on a Tuesday, when I knew he'd be at work because I could not stand the idea of being watched while I carried boxes. I took the books I'd bought before I met him. I left the ones we'd chosen together. I stood in the doorway of that kitchen for a while, the counter where the phone had been, the cabinet where the third glass came from, and I understood that I would never be able to walk into a room like that again without checking the table for how many places were set. The first night alone was the hardest, not because I missed him, but because silence exposes everything you've been avoiding. A small room, a single lamp, walls with no memories attached. I expected the tears to come crashing down all at once. They didn't. They arrived slowly, politely, as if even my pain understood that screaming was no longer necessary. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who trusted without fear. I slept in my clothes. I woke up at 4, and for about 3 seconds I didn't remember, and then I did, and the remembering was worse than the knowing had been. That's the thing nobody warns you about. For weeks afterward, you get 1 clean second every morning before it comes back. Morning came quietly. I made tea and watched the steam rise and realized how long it had been since I'd done something purely for myself. Days passed, then weeks. People asked questions I didn't have the energy to answer. Some told me I was brave. Others told me I should have fought harder. They didn't understand. You don't fight for someone who already left. You just accept that they reached the ending before you did. Damon tried to reach me. Messages, calls, apologies that got longer with time, as if word count could replace accountability. I read some and ignored others, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. One evening, I finally replied, I hope you heal, but I won't be part of the lesson. That was the last message I sent. A friend asked me later whether I regretted the way I did it, whether I wished I had confronted him quietly, privately, given him the chance to explain without a witness in the room. I've thought about it honestly, and the answer is no. Not because the theater of it satisfied me. It didn't. There was no triumph in that kitchen, only 3 people finding out what they were. But because for 8 months 2 people had been conducting a conversation about my marriage that I wasn't allowed into. Setting that third glass on the table was the first time in a year that I decided something about my own life, and it happened. That's all it was. Not revenge, attendance.